Hi, during my last video I talked essentially about the equipment that we use to copy or to scan our negative and our slides. I didn't talk too much about how to take the pictures of those negative and slide and how to process those images. So this is the goal of this second video, to tell you about how to take the picture and how to process the image in different software. As you know, many different manufacturers made a different type of film, either color slide or color negative or black and white. So each film has its own personality. I mean by that each film has its own color balance, its own contrast, its own luminosity, and its own grain. So for those reasons, as you will see later, we can program action and preset to improve and accelerate the process of those films. There is three types of film that we can scan and also convert to a positive image. The first type of film is slide film. So slide film is quite easy because it's a positive image that you want to render as a positive image onto your monitor. So once you take a picture of a color slide, all you need to do after that is just to adjust the contrast, the luminosity, and the color balance. So it's in my mind, it's the easiest type of film you can process. Then the second type of film would be the black and white negative. Okay, the black and white negative is a little bit more complicated, but not so much. Here what you have to do, since it's a negative image, you have to reverse the tone into your image once this is in your camera. So with your software, there is a function where you can invert the tone, and the white tone will become black and the black tone will become white. So it's quite easy to convert the tone or to invert the tone with those software. And finally, since the software we use are mostly RGB software, so they are color software, you will need to transform it to a black and white image, or with an image with a different shade of gray. So it's a lot easier if you do it this way, because you're sure that your final image won't have some kind of color cast in your black and white image. And finally, the third type of film that you will copy is maybe the most complicated. This is the color slide film, the color negative film. Color negative film, of course, you want to get a positive image on your monitor. So the first step you will have to do is to invert the tone again. So here again, the software can do that. I will show you later how to invert the tone, so the dark tone becomes bright and the bright tones become dark. As you will see also, those color negative film have a very strong orange mask. So when you invert the image in your software, it will become very blue. So I will show you how to remove that blue. And finally, with the different kind of adjustment that you normally do in different software, you will adjust the contrast, the color balance, and the luminosity of the final image. Now let's see how I scan my different images with different system. Personally, I use the Bello with the slide copier attachment to make my scanning. You could use any of the system I illustrated in the previous video I made a month ago. So up to you to use the equipment you have and that you prefer. But for this demonstration, I'm using the Bello with the slide copying attachment. So the first step I normally do when I do copy a negative or a slide is to adjust the magnification. Okay, If you take a slide, for example, or a negative, it's the same size. The image is 36 millimeter wide by 24 millimeter high. Okay, and this format is called, in the digital world, this format is called the full frame format. So camera having a full frame format have a sensor exactly the same size as those slides. So if you have a full frame format, what you have to do first is to adjust your system so you get 1x magnification or life-size magnification. So to do so, you will have to turn the focusing ring, or to adjust the bellow, or adjust the extension tube to get a magnification of 1x exactly. Personally, I don't have a full frame format. I have an APS-C format, which is smaller. The Nikon APS-C format is only 16 by 24 instead of 24 by 36. So that means if I want to copy all the slide onto a smaller sensor, I will need less magnification than 1x. And that magnification in my case for the APS-C Nikon is 0.67x. So or 2/3 of an x to get the right magnification to copy a slide. So for the APS-C format, I will reduce the length of my bellow to get less magnification. Once you have adjusted your system to get the right magnification, lock it in place so it doesn't move anymore. The next step is to adjust the focus on your slide or on your negative. So what you do is you just put a slide or a negative in the right compartment. Okay, negative would be here, slide is in the middle slot. You take a light source, so you light your subject. Ensure that your lens is set at the maximum aperture. You want to have minimal depth of field to do the focusing adjustment. And then what you do is you move your system, camera, lens, and so regarding to the slide. You move the slide regarding to the system, or you move the system regarding to the slide. It's up to depending what you use. And to make the focus, I will just move the slide or the film back and forth until it's in sharp focus into my camera. So once it is in sharp focus, you lock it there, so you ensure that the focusing is not changing anymore and the magnification is not changing anymore either. Once this is well focused and well adjusted for the magnification, now you can set the lens back to the optimal aperture. In my case, it would be somewhere between f8 and f11. Okay, so you adjust it at the best aperture. So this way you ensure you don't have too much diffraction, but have enough a depth of field to cover curved film, because those film are not really flat, they are curved. So to ensure to compensate for the curvature of your film, using a smaller aperture like f8, f11, you will ensure you get enough depth of field to have all the film sharp all over. Once the aperture is set, then you have to set the ISO on your camera. Make sure you use the lowest ISO, or what they call the nominal ISO of your camera, because this is the ISO that will give you less noise in your picture. It's no use to use high ISO when you can use lower ISO and don't get any noise. Here you have the opportunity to adjust the exposure by the time exposure or by the distance of your light source. So to make sure you don't get any noise into your images, use the nominal ISO. Make sure also that you don't get any variation into the color balance of your light source. No matter if you use a light table or if you use a tungsten light bulb like this one, or if you use a LED light bulb like this one, or a flash, doesn't matter. Make sure that you always use the same kind of source each time you do copy, and this way you can adjust the color temperature of your camera according to the light source. For a light bulb like this one, I would set it something around 3400 Kelvin degree. For daylight Dell light bulb like this one, I would use something like 6500 Kelvin degree. Same thing for a flash source. And make sure that you adjust the camera adjustment to the light source, and always keep those adjustments each time you do copy. This way you won't have variation from time to time you take pictures. Once this is all adjusted, color balance, ISO, focus, magnification, then you are ready to take a picture. Before you take a picture, make sure that your slide is clean and doesn't have any dust or any dirt on it. I prefer to use the non-contact system like this blower. This way you can often remove dirt or dust from your film just by blowing the dust away. If for some reason the dust doesn't want to get away, you can buy some of those paintbrush for artists. Some are very, very soft. There is no danger to scratch film with those. So with those soft brush, you can easily remove some dust from your film on both sides. And if you don't have any brush and you're in a rush to do some pictures, try to use those cloths for cleaning eyeglasses. They are very, very soft and safe, so you can clean your slide or your film with this, but be very gentle not to scratch the image, and make sure the cloth is very clean for that. So once you have your image ready, put it into the copying system, and then you make a first exposure in the auto exposure mode. So once the picture is done, I check the histogram to see how the histogram looks. If the histogram is well centered, then I will keep the image and I go for the next image. If the image is either too much on the left or too much on the right, then I can readjust the exposure using the exposure compensation button here. You know, the button with the plus and minus sign. You can use this one, and you can give some adjustment. If the image is too bright, then underexpose the image, and if the image is too dark, then overexpose the image with this plus and minus compensation button. Retake the picture again, and then check the histogram. And once you get an histogram that looks okay, well centered, then you probably have a good image of your negative or your slide to work with into your preferred software. Okay, now that we have seen how to scan our negative or our slide film, let's see how we can process it. I mainly use Photoshop, Lightroom, and ON1 PhotoRAW, but you can easily transpose the same methodology to Luminar Neo, to Corel Paint Shop, or to DxOLab or any other software that you use. How do I simply convert a negative image into Photoshop? First thing you have to do is you have to open the file that you want to convert. So, File, Open, you choose your file. Let's say I use this one. You open the file, If this is a JPEG, it will open into Photoshop. If this is a RAW file, it will open into Adobe Camera Raw. So right here, I have an Adobe Camera Raw file that I will convert. You can do it now or you can do it later. You can crop the file and adjust it so you can save it at the end. So let's crop it and adjust the level right now. The image is not quite level, as you can see by the bottom border. So I will use the small level here in the cropping module of Photoshop. So I just put my cursor on the line and adjust the level. Once the image is leveled, then I will modify the cropping to remove the border around the picture. So here I can move it this way. I can move it also down here. So now I have an image that has no border. And of course you can, if you need to, recenter as long as you don't get into the borders. So let's say this is the cropping that I want. I click enter. Once it is cropped, then you can open the file, this file that will move you from ACR, Adobe Camera Raw, back to Photoshop itself. Now that I am into Photoshop, I want to convert this file easily. Before I have created an action to do that. So since the action is already in my system, all I have to do is I click on the window tab here. I open the action box. Here I have the action box. Make sure that you are into the action tab. And down on the list, you have a file that is called raw nef to raw. Let me choose a good one. Raw file to the negative to positive 1. Okay. Choose that file. Click play. And the file is converted into a positive image. Now you can close the box, the action box. The file is not perfect. It's a bit bright, and though color are not so bad, there is still more adjustment to do. So personally, I prefer to work with Adobe Camera Raw instead of Photoshop itself. So to go back into Camera Raw, I just click on the filter tab. I choose Camera Raw filter. It brings me back into Camera Raw, and then I can make the adjustment like I would do into Lightroom. Exposure is too bright, so I can just darken the image a little bit. I will adjust my black. To do so, I just press the Alt key, and I move the black cursor until I have about 5% of colors. Do the same with the white. I keep my finger on the Alt key and I move the cursor, and when I see some color appearing, I just move back until it disappears. So I have made my black and white adjustment. From there, you can, if you want, you can adjust the shadow, you can adjust the highlight, you can adjust the contrast. So I will first start with the contrast. Add a little bit more contrast. Be careful, if you go too far, you will have a lot of vibrance and saturation. If it is not dark enough, then you can just move the shadow backward. You can move the highlight forward or backward. You can readjust exposure. And by playing like that, back and forth, you can adjust the right exposure and the right contrast. If you consider the color balance not to be correct, you can either use the eyedropper here. To do so, you will need to find some very bright white Let's say that I use it on the white of my eyes. It's a little bit too yellow to my taste. Cursor have been moved from 0 to 10 and from 0 to 9 for the yellow and the magenta. So like I said, it's kind of too warm for my taste. I will move back, maybe back to plus 4, and the magenta can be let's say about plus 14. So highlight are a little bit high on this side and the shadow a little bit darks. So I will open shadow a little and darken the highlight. So this is how I make an adjustment using an action into Photoshop. Once you're done with it, click OK. You return into Photoshop with the adjustment. Click on the File tab. Save as. Normally I save as a PSD file. Since I modified the file, I will click dash M for modify 01. Record. And of course, if I want it in a smaller size, then I will just click on image mode 8-bit image size with a width of 1800 pixel by 1200 pixel. So the image is smaller, and then I can save as a JPEG file. Let's say I use 9 quality, and this is the way I normally do my conversion to black and white. Of course, I could do more. I can, of course, make some local adjustment. I can make remove some dust or some dot like this one, just by clicking on the removal tool, enlarging my cursor a little bit too big, and there we go. So you can adjust your image, removing dust, mark, and particle. How to create an action into Photoshop. It can be, first you have to open a file. It could be a JPEG file or a RAW file. If you open a RAW file, then of course you will, it will open into Adobe Camera Raw. So once the file is open, if it's in Adobe Camera Raw, you can first crop it and also level it. So first thing I do, I use the level that I align with the edge of the image. Then I can crop it to remove the border. Once it's okay, you just click enter. And of course, you can also rotate the file to have it vertical. Enter. Once the file has been cropped and leveled, then you can get out of Adobe Camera Raw to go back into Photoshop. So by opening the file, you go back to Photoshop, and the first step you will need to do is to click, you will have to open the action module for Photoshop. To do so, you click on Window, you click on Action, and you got a box here that is the action box. You have many different tabs into this box. Make sure you are into the action tab. If you want to create an action, you will have first to click on the square here down the box with the plus sign in it. So when you click on that sign, there is another box opening where you can give a name to your action. For example, give a name that is meaningful to you. It could be raw, negative, to positive. And if you plan to make many action eventually, just give him a number. I normally go 0, 1. This way I can create up to 99 action. Once you have given a name to that action, click on record. And once you click on record, you will see appearing a red dot here. That means that the Photoshop is ready to record any action you will do into Photoshop. It will record each action, and then it will stop recording when you click the square box here at the end. So the first thing I want to do, since the image is negative, is I want to make it positive. To do so, down the right window, there is a small round circle here, half black, half white. Just click on that circle, and in the option that are open there, just click on invert. This will invert the image from negative to positive, but the color are not well adjusted. So the next step, when I did that, I got a second layer here for the inversion of the image. So I don't want to work with two layer. I just want to work with a single layer. So you come here into the menu up here, you click the layer tab, and down the window that opens, you click flatten image. This will convert the two layer into a single layer called background. Once you're there, you have to adjust the color. So if you go into the Photoshop menu up here, click on the image tab and click auto tone. The image is correcting color, some color and some contrast and some exposure. Click again on image, click on auto contrast, and finally click again on image and click on auto color. There is a slight color adjustment made with those three adjustments. The image is quite good. It's not perfect, but it's quite good. And this is where the action stops. So I'm quite close to what I need. I will finish the adjustment into ACR, which is Adobe Camera Raw. But before going to Adobe Camera Raw, I will just stop the recording of the action by clicking the square. So now I have an action recorded in the system that will serve me later for other pictures. Okay, I can close it. At the moment, I don't need this action box anymore. I can close it if I want. The image is not perfect to my taste. Like I said, I'd like to get it less bluer. So I click on filter tab here, and I will choose Camera Raw filter. So that will bring me back into the Camera Raw module of Adobe. Here I've got all the possible adjustments that I can make. Usually once I'm there, to fine-tune the white balance, I will use the water dropper here. So using this eyedropper here, I will choose a white color or a gray color into the pictures. Normally my shirt was white, so I click here, and it adjusts the color. It reduces the blue cast that was there before. Sorry. Image is not quite perfect, but it's very close to what I need. So now I will fine-tune the adjustment, playing with all these cursor here that you have in ACR, which is exactly the same thing as into Lightroom. So let's make the image a little bit darker, slightly. Adjust the black, So to adjust the black, you just click on the alternate on the keyboard, and you move the cursor until you see about, let's say, 5% of the black. Do the same for the white. For the white, you don't want to have any color at all, so move the cursor right here or back, left, until the red colors disappear. So you have fine-tuned the black and the white. Then you can do some adjustment on the shadow and the highlight depending on how much you want. I remember that suit was dark blue, so I will leave it like this, because if I go darker, I won't see any detail into my beard. So I can even try it to see if I can get a little bit more detail in the beard. Not too much, because it's going to turn kind of blue. The highlight, if I move the highlight cursor, I can make my shirt to be whiter or darker. Same thing for my skin. So I just don't want to get my skin too bright. Can probably move the white if I just want to get the shirt whiter, and move the highlight down to get the skin darker. I can also move the contrast slider to increase the contrast, and at the same time it will also increase some of the vibrancy into the image. So move slightly the cursor. Here my skin tone is about just as I want, and I would say this image is about perfect to what I want. Of course I can do some local adjustment if I want, but it's very close to what I need, especially if it was some kind of vacancy or pictures that don't need perfect color adjustment. I would stop here. If I would like to adjust this portrait to be enlarged eventually, then I would probably do some more adjustment, like a local adjustment to darken the suit a little bit, and probably put some kind of a vignette around the subject. Click OK when you're done. So the image is back into Photoshop. Normally I save my image as a PSD or as an image. Often when the image has been changed and modified, I just had slash or dash M for modified, 01 because this is version 1. Save it, and if I need some different size copy into the JPEG format, then I just click on the image mode, change it to 8-bit instead of a 16-bit. Image size, let's say this is for the internet, I would make it 1200 pixel by 1800 pixel. Save it. And finally, I would just save as a JPEG image. Let's say 9 is enough, though I save it in a quality 9. So that's the way I create an action to be used later for other pictures. Action function is typical to Photoshop. You won't find it in any other software. However, the other software have something similar called the preset. Presets are simply a kind of recording of successive action, successive control you made into the software, like Lightroom or ON1 or Luminar. And once you created the preset, you can reuse it on many other images that will make a similar action like the action into Photoshop. So if I take this image here and if I open it into the develop module, on the left side there is a different tab that you can see. There is a navigator, preset, snapshot, Easter egg. This is Lightroom, and into Lightroom you have the presets. So if you go into those presets, you can see that I have preset that will eventually convert the image into a positive image. It might not be perfectly adjusted for color and contrast, but those presets will bring you closer to the final result just by clicking on it like this one. Of course, this is Lightroom. If you go into some other software, like let's say I go into ON1. ON1 is kind of similar with the preset. If I open the same image into ON1, Photora, you will see that there is preset that you can also use. Once you are into ON1, you will have all the files. So if I open the same file here, I can open it here into the develop module. Of course, I can make the image vertical, and as in Lightroom, Photoshop, I can adjust the cropping, I can adjust the level. It's all kind of operation. You can do the same. Once this is done, sorry if my menu is in French. This is a French version of ON1. Here on the left side, you got some, in French it's called pré-réglage, it means presets. And you have all kind of presets that you can download or you can have your own preset, like AT is my own preset. So if I click here at AT, I got a series of presets that are already saved for converting a negative image to positive image. So it's not an action, it's a preset, but it does the same. If I put my cursor on it, as you can see, I get different presets that will eventually convert my image to what I like. Let's say that I choose this one. This is the closest preset I have to the final image. And then you just go back into your develop module where you can simply reduce the exposure. Here again, since it is done by inverting the curve, you have to think negative. If you want to reduce the exposure, you have to move the cursor right. And the same thing for the black. You have to move the white cursor if you want to change your black. If you want to change your white, you move the black cursor. And you adjust the image by controlling all the different cursor you have to get the final image. Now let's see how would process the negative image into ON1 Photora. First thing, I would choose an image. This is a raw file that I will open into the develop module. Once it is into the develop module, since I want to create a preset, it's like an action, a Photoshop action. Since I want to create a preset, I won't make the cropping right now because I don't want to include the cropping into the preset. So first thing I will do to convert the image will be to go into the develop module. It would be to go click into the effect tab. Then I will say add a filter. Into the filters, I will choose curve. Here I got the curve window. When you look into the curve window, there is a similar curve to the one that you can see into Lightroom or Photoshop. You can eventually modify this curve by moving up the dark point and the bright point, or if you don't want to manipulate that yourself, here into the style default, you can click the arrow and choose invert. That will invert the curve for you right here. As in any other software, of course, since the negative has a very strong orange mask, you get a blue cast into the image that you converted. To remove that blue cast, I go back to the develop module of Photoshop, and then I will use the eyedropper here to convert, to minimize the color cast. So using the eyedropper, I know that the metal bar are white, as I know that her dress color is also white. So by clicking on the white part of the image, not necessarily in the highlight, but into the shadows or midway between the full shadow and full highlight, that will help to correct the colors. Or you can eventually also click here on her dress. So this is not a perfect result, but it's close to what I want to get. Once you adjusted roughly adjusted the color balance, you can go and do some tone adjustment. The exposure is not so bad. I don't have a big adjustment to do on exposure. Don't want the sky to be too, this is too bright, this is maybe too dark. So somewhere in between is not bad. I just checked the overall density of the image, not the local density. Once I have the overall density adjusted, then I can go and adjust the white and the black. Remember, this is an inverted curve, so you have to think in reverse. If I want to adjust the black, I move the white cursor. If I want to adjust the white, I move the black cursor. Since on one, don't use the Alt key for showing the excess of over or under exposure, we use the J key instead. So you press the J key, and when you move the cursor on either side, as you can see, this is the black. As soon as that the black gets too dark, it will be turning blue. So I don't go more than that for the black. Same thing for the white. I press the J key and I move the cursor on either side. If you realize that you get too much red into the image, here I don't have this problem. The red is only appearing on the border. So this is my adjustment for the white. Now you can complete the adjustment. If you believe the image is too contrasty, then you just play with the contrast. You can adjust the shadow or the highlight until you get a result that is pleasing to your eyes. Let's say this is the final result of the image I want. So now that I have adjusted and converted the image close to what I need, I will create a preset. Preset is the same thing as an action into Photoshop. So on the left side of the software, you got a window where you can see all the presets. Some of those presets are supplied by ON1, and you can get them free from different distributor, or you can buy them too, or you can simply create your own preset. This is what I'm going to do here. Here are my own presets. So if I click here, it opens a window with all the presets that I have. So preset are here, and now that the preset window is open, I already have some preset here, but since I'm creating a new one, you have to click on setting. You have to come here and save setting as a preset. Give it a name that is meaningful to you, like let's say negative to positive conversion. And since I may create a different preset, I will call this one 01. You save it. The preset just appear here, negative to positive 01. This is my preset, and it's ready to use for other function. So finally, since I'm done with the color and the tone adjustment, I can use the cropping function to eventually adjust the final image. Let's use the spirit level here to there to adjust the level, and then by moving the corner cursor, I can adjust the cropping. I can move the image left or right. Let's say I like it this way. Apply. The image is cropped and ready to use. And now that I have created the preset, I can go back into my files. Say I'd like to use this file this time. This is our sister. So back into ON1 develop module. This is the image. Now, instead of doing all the action I did before, I just click on this preset, and this is almost completed. All I need to do is to do some final adjustment, like let's say I'd like it to have it a little bit darker, like this. Let's say I check for the black, I check for the white. This is about okay, a little bit bluish here, it's not too bad. And the white is only into the border, so I accept it this way. Shadows are deep, highlight are bright, so I may just do some adjustment. If I play with the highlight, that should adjust my shadow. If I go with the shadow, that should adjust my highlight. And you play back and forth like this until you get something you like, and that is to your taste. Let's say this is what I want. Cropping, leveling the image first, level, crop, apply, and I'm done. All I need to do now is to export these two images into a JPEG file so I can put it onto the internet. Since many photographer works with the Lightroom, I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of a Lightroom to convert negative image into positive image, and also eventually how to create a preset which is something like an action into Photoshop. So let's start with the choosing an image. Let's take this one here. Move into the develop module. Normally I like to work with an image that is well oriented. To do so, I will have to make it into photo, rotate right clockwise. Okay, now I can open the image and it is well oriented. I won't do the cropping right now because since I'm creating a preset eventually, I don't want to include the cropping into the preset because it may change from pictures to pictures. But let's start with the inversion of the image. Lightroom doesn't have an invert function like Photoshop has. So to do so, you will have to come here on the right side with all the processing module, and you have to go into the tone and curve tab. So now you can see the curve of the image. The image itself is the black one, and this is the curve graphic going from the darkest point in the image down here on the lower left to the brightest point of the image up in the upper right corner. So, but this is a negative image that we have now, and since I want to have a positive image, I have to invert the dark tone and the bright tone respectively. So to invert the tone, all you have to do is click on the lower left corner here, slide it up to the upper left corner, take the brightest point at the upper right corner, move it down to the lower right corner. As you can see, I inverted the curve, and I now have a positive image on the window. Since we have a very strong orange mask into the color negative, sorry, we get a very strong cyan cast into the positive image. So this is something we have to correct. To do so, move up into the develop module of Lightroom, and what I will do is I will use the eyedropper to make the image to correct the balance, the color balance with the eyedropper. I can click here on the white wall. That gives me already some pretty correct color. It's not perfect, but it's correct. I could have also used it on the gray of the sweatshirt. So didn't change much from the other one. Now what I can see is that the image is a little bit too bright, so I have to change the exposure. Since I inverted the curve, I have to make sure that I will think in reverse for the adjustment. So if I want to darken the image, I have to move right instead of left, and that will darken the image. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get an overall adjustment. I'm not looking at the dark shadow, I'm not looking at the bright highlight. I just try to make it so it's about correct all over the image. The next step is I'm going to adjust the black. Normally I would do it with the Alt key, but when we play with the curve, I realized that we cannot use the Alt key anymore to figure out the black or the white point. Same for here. Even if I move the cursor while pressing the Alt key, it doesn't show any overexposed or underexposed area. But you can actually see it in the image itself if you don't press the Alt key. If I move the black cursor, as you can see, I am getting brighter or brighter white or darker white. If I move the white cursor, I'm getting darker black, brighter black or darker black. So what I'm going to do is to figure out visually if I have a nice white and a nice black. So this is for the black. It's about good like that. And this is for the white. It seems about okay to me. Of course, you can play with the contrast. Contrast will adjust the difference between the white and the black, but also adjust the color saturation. So don't play too far with it. If you go too far, you get exaggerated contrast and very saturated colors. So try to adjust the contrast the best you can. And of course, you can play with the shadow. My hairs are a little bit too dark, so I'd like to get a brighter hair. So I'm going to use the highlight instead of the shadow cursor. So this way I can brighten my hair. And I do the same with the whites. I'm going to get some highlight details by moving the cursor, the shadow cursor to the right. It's maybe not perfect, but it's close to what I want to get. Skin tone is a little bit too yellow to my taste, so I'd like maybe to make it a little bit more magenta, not too much, and a little bit less yellow, not too much either, too blue, magenta. It's an on-camera flash picture taken very quickly a long time ago, so the negative itself is not necessarily young, and light conditions are not the best. But this is quite a decent image for a snapshot. So since I consider I have adjusted most of the tone and most of the color, even if it's not perfect, I can create a preset out of that. So for the preset, you just come here on the left side and you got a different tab, navigator, preset, snapshot. So open the preset tab, and on the right side you got a plus sign. So click on the plus sign, you say create a preset, and then depending on the group you want to use, let's say I want to make it into inversion of negative. I use that group, and I will give it a name, untitled preset, so I can give it a meaningful name. Let's say I call it NEF, which is my raw file format, negative to positive. And since I may create more of those presets, I call this one 01. And then you just create the preset by clicking the button create here. Now I've created a preset that is ready to use for Lightroom. And of course I can now do the final cropping. So let's make it this way. I crop this side. This side, let's say I want it this way, so enter, and now I got my final image and I created a preset. Next time I want to take a picture, I can eventually use that preset. So let's say I'm going back to the library. Let's take this image here. It's also a flash picture taken inside. So if I use this image, it's a family picture taken inside with a flash probably, and to save all the action, to not to repeat all the action I already made before. I just come here into the group inversion negative, NEF to negative and positive, so I can click that preset. Okay, not perfect, close to what I want. So I can go back into the exposure module. Maybe I get a little bit darker. Let's see what I do with the contrast. Let's say about this contrast. Let's check the white. Oops, so yeah. Since I have no effect on the cursor, I just arrange the white, go with the black, open the highlight, close the shadow. Not perfect, but it's close to what I want. I see there is some light fall off in the corner because of the flash that didn't cover all the image evenly. So I can eventually use the local adjustment here and say I want to add a linear radial gradient. So click in the center. And I want to brighten the edge. Since this is negative. Okay, first thing I should do, once you choose your gradient, reverse it, invert it. So you don't want to do the center of the gradient, but the outside of the gradient. So you have to invert the gradient, and you have to adjust the exposure. You want it darker, brighter. So since it was dark like that, at 0, I can open the light on the edge of the image so it is more evenly lit. I can do a final adjustment, still a little bit bright, so I darken the image a little, about like that. And that would be my final result after I do the cropping. And this is my final image now. To conclude this video, I would say that if you understand how to convert a color negative image to a color positive image, doing the same with a black and white negative image to get a color positive image is practically the same process, except at the end you don't have to worry about the color balance. However, I would recommend that you convert your RGB files, which is a color file, into a grayscale file, or if you can also desaturate each one of the RGB color to 0, so this way you get a neutral file with a neutral gray tone and no color cast in your final image. For the post-processing of a color slide scanning, it's even simpler. Since you start with a positive image, you do not have to invert tonalities and color as we do with a color negative. And since the image is on the sensor is basically the same kind of image that you get when you take a landscape or a portrait photography, the process of a scan slide image is basically the adjustment of the tonalities, the contrast, the color balance. Basically you process it like you do any kind of a standard pictures. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button right under this video. If you are not a member yet, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. This way you will be advised when I will publish my next video. And if you have any photographer friends that like macro photography and close-up photography, let them know about my channel. Until next video, enjoy photography.